Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, I'd like to talk about Uber Lilith fight in Diablo 4. For those of you who don't know, Uber Lilith is the first boss that was available in the Diablo 4 right at its launch. You fight a beefed up version of Lilith from the campaign, this time her being level 100 and available only in the World Tier 4. It's a fairly challenging fight, especially considering the type of fights you usually encounter in the Diablo, with a very bad loot. So, let's start off with the things I liked about the fight. As I just mentioned, it's a very unique and quite memorable fight, since most of the fights in the Diablo 4 usually last only a couple of seconds. So you'll definitely remember it, even if you do it only once. The length of the fight feels just about right. Not too quick, but it also doesn't feel like a drag. And it tests your skill as a player, it tests your build and your gear, so you definitely need to come prepared for it. But unfortunately, all of these things get, in my opinion, overshadowed by some very glaring problems. For context, I've cleared this fight on 3 non-hardcore characters, and I have around 500 attempts across all of them, so I've seen quite a bit of it, and yeah. There's definitely some, small issues as you might expect. You have some minor bugs where the abilities go off after you finish a phase, or there are some visual clutter issues in the fight. If you're running some area of effect abilities, then you'll easily miss stuff on the floor, and there's a lot of it. Lilith tends to get stuck in animations or jump out of the arena, becoming unreachable for a while. And, as I mentioned, these things are quite small and, on their own. But after you do 100 or more attempts, they kind of tend to stack up and become quite annoying. But again, it wouldn't be such a big deal if the fight itself wasn't so problematic. I will not go over all of the mechanics in the fight, but my main issue is with the one-shot mechanics, and there's plenty of them. So you start the fight itself is 2-phase fight, and you start phase 1. And immediately you have to deal with 2 one-shot mechanics. One being the blood blisters that you have to destroy before they pop and one-shot you, and the other one being the waves that Lilith creates. And they also run through the arena and one-shot you if you're unable to avoid them. And the Uber Lilith having some one-shot mechanics isn't a problem on its own, right? It's supposed to be a hard fight, it's supposed to be a test for you, and you're expected to show your skill at some level. But I have a problem with it when the whole phase is simply just one-shot mechanics, and that's it. There isn't much to do in this fight. You destroy the blood blisters, avoid the waves, deal some damage to Lilith, and then the whole process repeats. New blisters appear, you kill them, avoid the waves, Lilith comes back, deals some damage, 3 seconds pass, again blisters, waves, and so on and so forth, until you finally defeat her, and you start the phase 2. Now, the phase 2 also has the one-shot mechanics, but it's miles ahead of the phase 1 in a way that those mechanics are utilized. The phase 2 feels slower, but it actually isn't. It probably takes about the same time as the phase 1. But those mechanics are spaced out. So suddenly, you actually feel like you're playing the game. Like you're actually, using your abilities, chunking down the Lilith, and you can see that, alright, these abilities are coming in, you need to prepare for them, then you do some dodging or, pop your invulnerability to avoid some of the damage. You go through it, and then the next part of the fight begins. Again, you deal some damage, you run around from AoE maybe, kill some ads, and so on and so forth. But this time it's slower. It's actually enjoyable. The danger is still there. You can still get one shot at any time, but it doesn't feel like that's the only thing that you're doing in this phase. You're actually playing the game. Now, if the phase 1 was more similar to phase 2 in its pacing and the utilization of the mechanics, the fight itself would already become 10 times better than it already is. But another thing that I felt was kind of missing is space for creativity when approaching those mechanics. You spend your whole game, customizing your character. You get full control of the build you want to use, abilities, right? The gear you select, the appearance, all the way down to small stuff like a Paragon board giving you small increments of resistances or stats, right? So it feels like you're customizing your character. But when it comes to the Uber Lilith fight, you're pigeonholed into the same tactics as everyone else is using, simply because there's no other way to do this fight, right? If we're talking about the waves and Lilith fight, there are only two things you can do. One, use your invulnerabilities if you have them, and second, when you don't have them, run to the edge, bait the waves in a more favorable place and pattern for yourself, and then just run behind the last wave, and that's it. And I find that a little boring. I would expect this kind of end game content to be a little bit more flexible, in a sense that if I'm using a, let's say, tanky character, then maybe I should be able to soak up a couple of those waves. But the trade-off is that I deal less damage, so overall, it doesn't give me a huge advantage, but at least I get to play to the strength of my character, right? Or if there was a way for, let's say, your super bursty character, then I don't know, some item spawns that if you destroy it, you get a zone where it's safe at least once every a couple of waves, so that you kind of get flexibility on how you want to approach those mechanics, those super important mechanics that happen every couple of seconds. As it stands right now, you kind of have two options, right? Either you learn the fight, learn all of the mechanics, learn to avoid them, do them properly, and make no mistakes the entire fight, or just pick a build that does insane amounts of damage, which most classes have at least one build like that, and just end the fight in 3 seconds before Lilith has any chance to use the abilities. And the second option, as fun as it might sound, for me sounds like a bad way to do the fight. And right now, that's really the best way to do the fight, because otherwise, it's just unfun, the whole thing. So in short, I feel like Blizzard need to do a couple of things. first of all, and the biggest one for me, would be spacing out the one-shot mechanics in the phase 1. Or alternatively, make them apply, deal damage obviously, but also apply some stacking debuff on your character, so that, if you make one mistake or even 2 mistakes, the fight doesn't immediately end. You get a chance to, stay super focused and still finish this phase, right? Another thing I would absolutely love to see is a damage cap on the boss, so that you cannot, cheese the fight by dealing hundreds of millions of damage in a short span of time, right? Make it like, 5 million damage in 3 seconds would be capped, or something like that, and at least then, everyone would get to see the fight, avoid some mechanics, actually play the game, right? I would also love to see blacksmiths added to the dungeon, because if you do, hundreds of attempts learning the fight, it gets quite annoying to teleport in town and find the blacksmith and, repair all of your gear. Some minor things would be making the spawn points of the waves in the first phase a different color, so that if you're running like a necromancer with corpse explosions, you actually get to see them somewhere on the ground, rather than getting caught off guard, simply because the entire ground is covered with the corpses and your AoE. And also would love to see the hitboxes represented by the visuals of those waves. Right now, it feels like the hitbox of the wave is actually in front of it, so when you're learning the fight and you see, alright, wave is coming, I'll just sidestep and boom, you go down, and you go back and watch the replay, and actually you go down way before the wave even reached you, and that's because the visual of the wave is actually incorrect, and it's the wave itself, the damaging part is actually right in front of it. And for the future Uber bosses, I would love them to take a more open-minded approach to the encounter design. Make mechanics in a way that they can be dealt with in multiple ways, or give different classes ways to ignore some of the mechanics and instead focus on the others, and make your boss fighting experience on different classes feel different. Like on your necromancer who has a lot of AoE damage, you would focus on clearing some ads, or cleaving the enemies with the boss, and on your super mobile character, maybe you would jump between damaging the boss, interacting with the items, or avoiding some of the stuff that less mobile builds would usually try and soak up, right? Leave some room for players to actually come up with strategies, rather than all of them following the same path of the least resistance. Yeah, that's all I have for today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and see you later.